Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Needlebar at its now new time because one nerd does not change time zones.
Oh, did everybody change time again?
Everybody changed time last Sunday. So
Oh,
that's why I was like, oh, I've got to be ready for the live at 6. And then at like 5:45, I'm like, wait a minute. Is it at 7?
I forgot all about that. You crazy time changers, you.
I know it's very easy, but it looks like we have a few people that have joined us already. I am not in control today because Justin has all the fancy buttons and I don't. Yep. So he's bringing everybody up. We have Cindy joining us. Hello. Letty. Hello.
We have Doug from Los Angeles.
Yep. Hello, Doug. And Doug says your new streaming platform isn't showing comments on replay. There has to be a setting there. We can definitely check that out. I know we're using the same platform. I want to say the two regular guys are using it as well as Ramona, so I can reach out and we can ask those guys too. Hopefully we can figure that out.
We have Z-Fish7 coming in from Louisiana. Hello. Good
I'm glad you
evening.
read that. It's far enough away from my eyes that I would have most definitely pronounced that wrong and offended someone.
Offended someone.
Someone might not even have been that person from what my eyes picked up. But I guess today we're going to start off with a little bit of announcement. Usually we hold those till the end, but at Long Beach in the show we had the privilege, I guess Justin had the privilege of teaching with Bonnie Nielsen. And we had the privilege of meeting her. I know myself did, as well as Ramona. And one of the things that we talked to Bonnie about was her book, Punch. So she wrote a book. This is actually, I don't know how long ago this book was published. I don't know if you looked at that information, but I know it's been out there for a while because I've had it for about 5 years. And it's probably one of the, I'm gonna call it the best book I've read on digitizing. I've read a few. There's not a ton out there, but this is one that covers a lot of things, and you can actually get a lot of tips and tricks from it. And it's amazing how much that it hasn't changed. Digitizing hasn't changed a ton. We've gotten tools that makes it faster, but the theory is all the same as it
Right.
was when Justin started doing this in the 1900s. Anytime I can get my jabs in there, right? But one of the interesting things that we learned in talking to Bonnie is that the prices that you see for this book that are on like Amazon, where it's $600, the publisher actually still has the English version in stock. And what we were able to do is we were able to get 100 books from the publisher that we're able to sell at their, I want to say it was their suggested retail at $70 per book. So we actually have that's an interesting ghost emoji you put in there, Justin.
That's weird. I just copied it from the browser.
Oh no! But we were actually able to get 100 copies of the book. We imported them in, and now we have those for sale on our website, where you guys can go. And Justin can't get away from the emoji. This is great. But you guys can go to theembroiderynerd.com, or you can go to links.embnerd.com. And you guys can order a book there. It'll be shipped on Fridays. So one of the things that we worked on when we were getting the website back up is that we set the shipping to go once a week, and we're actually having Adam help us fulfill shipments on that, because in the state of Iowa, you can actually work when you're 14. Interesting side note.
Real quick, I just looked at the editor's site, and it looks like they printed it in 2010. So
2010.
yeah, so it's been about 15 years.
It's been out for a little bit. We're hoping that if you guys like the book, if you want to get the book, again, it's on our website. If we go through 100 of them, we'll probably import another 100, and just keep them going until, I want to say that they had like 1,700 last I heard, before they shipped us 100. So they're probably 1,600 left before it's out of print and not going to be printed again. So, like I said, we now have this book on our website. Shipping is a flat rate, $10 anywhere in the United States. So I don't know if I think I covered everything, Justin. I wasn't planning on talking that much about the book, and so I didn't write down all the. Usually, I put down points, the things that I want to hit, but somebody didn't have enough prep time, Justin.
I haven't had the opportunity of reading the actual book, but just being in the class that I was teaching with Bonnie and just seeing, the 20 minutes or so of her presentation and the work that she does, it was pretty impressive. So I'm eager to read the book. I need to pick up a copy myself, but just kind of thumbing through the synopsis from the editor and some of the pictures that they showed. It's definitely stuff that's going to help you in your embroidery journey, especially if you're looking into digitizing or want to learn about digitizing. But uh, I would say you don't want to pass up the opportunity to have the book. I'm sure it has an immense amount of good information. Just knowing what Bonnie's put out there and the talent that she has.
Yep.
Um,
I
so
definitely I read the book 4 years ago, and I pulled it back out and have been rereading it since the Long Beach show, and I can honestly tell you that I'm still picking up bits and pieces out of it. It's got a lot of good info in there and good nuggets. We're trying to work with Bonnie to actually get her on and do an interview with her as well.
mhm.
She's checking her time. Last time I messaged her, she's checking how her days are going, and when she'll be able to do that. I know that it'll be at a special time because she is in Germany. They're 7 hours ahead, so it's like 2 a.m. in Germany right now, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so
So,
we'll have to work it in there that she's available and we're available. So
yep, it'll be like early afternoon one that we do, but we're definitely getting that scheduled with her as well. But like I said, book is available on the website for purchase now, and we also got our twill back up there. So those of you that were wanting to buy twill, that's also up on the website as well. We got that back up.
awesome.
All right. I think I sufficiently covered that. I hope I sufficiently covered that. But it's one of those resources that, there are very few resources out there that I recommend a lot. And it's one of those resources that I wish I could just express how good it is. Um, because I think it helps everybody that picks it up
Right.
and reads it. So, highly recommend.
And like Jeff mentioned, this is coming from somebody that has been in the industry that is based everything off theory and no amount of tools that have come out. Yes, it has made digitizing a lot easier than it was before. Cartooning, digitizing on tablets. Blowing the artwork up 6 to 1. There was a lot more time involved. I think the tools just kind of just like anything else, any other industry, the evolution of the tools that whatever person is using in their craft just makes their life easier. But the theory behind hers, and because she's from that school, kind of like since you want to point out how old I am, um,
No,
the
you're not allowed to do it with her though. It's
no,
different.
I would say we're from that school of learning how to do things manually. So therefore, the theory part of it is so important, and it's the backbone of digitizing. That if you know that part of it, whatever tool you're using, whatever software you're using, it's just going to make it that much more easier. So
Yep. So there is a question there at the last comment that I see. It is the copies that we have are in English.
yes,
I want to say that the last time I talked to her, she told me that the German ones were almost completely sold out, and that the English ones still had. I'm going to say 1,700, but that was before we got 100. So 1,600 roughly copies
right.
that we have.
So yeah, now that you have a distributor in the U.S., it'll be a lot easier, and I'm sure a lot less shipping involved if you are interested. So, um, but yeah, it's once they're gone, they're gone. So I think it's a good opportunity for all of us in the U.S. to jump on it and get one of these books and have it in your belt of tools uh, to
Yep.
learn from. So
I will say page 44 is probably my favorite. No, I'm just kidding. So those of you guys that do purchase the book, just know that page I think it's page 44. Um, they misprinted or it printed blank, but you can download the page from the publisher's website. So I'm just going to caveat that they're right there at the beginning,
Yeah,
but it's like one paragraph or one sentence. It's not like you're missing a massive page, but it is something that I did notice. Um, and that they do actually on the publisher's website have the download button. And I think that we should probably get that and put it on our website as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'll ask Matt. I was like, I'm gonna tell Matt. No, I'll ask Matt politely if maybe we can get that to happen too. So
And Letty's commenting that it's only in subtitles that it's in English.
only in all of the text. No, but there's some really cool stuff in there.
Should we have Bonnie on and she could live read it, and we'll have the subtitles on there?
Chapter 1. Oh no, I think that might be a really really long live. It's like 285 pages, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
we have to be a 10-parter.
yep. But now that we've got that announcement kind of out of that way, today we're going to be Justin will be live digitizing. No pressure. We're all going to watch over his shoulder very efficiently and throw popcorn. But Justin, you have this St. Patrick's design that you drew.
Somewhat, yeah. I came up with it.
Somewhat, you came up with it. All right, that's okay. I can't draw either. You should. That's why I like digitizing. My pen has a set stroke, and it doesn't have to be perfect because the fabric bends. But
So Cindy asked, "What are you making?" Let's take a vote. What size do you want this design at? Do you want it
I would say that you should put it at 2.25 inches tall.
for a hat?
I could see people doing that. I could also see a little bit of left chest, but I think if you do it at 2.25, 2.25 inches for a hat, you could probably make it so they could be scaled to what, 3 inches maybe.
Yeah. So let's do that. Let's. I'll digitize it for a hat, and keeping in mind that I am scaling it to
A left
three-ish.
chest ish.
Yeah, yeah, something that you could maybe throw on a towel or a shirt or something.
Oh, see, Cindy wants a full front.
Full front, of course she does.
Let's do a full front, Justin.
Full front applique with specialty motifs
No,
and
no, no applique. Just a full front, specialty motifs, a little bit of carving. Uh,
I'll tell you what, I will. We got a couple of hat size votes, so I'm going to do it as a hat, keeping
you have
in
to put
mind
taller
that
kinds in the spear.
we can kind of scale it up a little bit and use it for other uses, but we'll go
So
from there.
while I'm throwing popcorn at you, Justin, because this is a lot of fun. See, Barb likes a full front too. But typically when somebody sends you a design like this and they want it for a left chest and they want it for a hat, you typically start with the smaller size first because your limitations are going to be based off of how small it's going to be and not necessarily on something like this. It might affect it a little bit when it starts going tall, but you're basically going to approach this at the smaller size first, right, Justin?
Right, exactly. And the theory of normally if you digitize something for a hat, it will work for a flat application for the most part. The other way around, if you're digitizing something specifically for a left chest, you may not be digitizing it in a way that is going to work for a hat. So I typically try to digitize things with the intent that it'll work on a hat when I know it's a size that can possibly work on a hat. Um, and we got votes for 3-layer 3D puffs coming in. So
I mean, I wasn't going to bring it up, but
I'm
since
just
you
going to
brought it
ignore
up,
it.
Justin, I think that maybe you should.
I'm just going to ignore that. Thanks, Doug.
It seems like something the puff off champion would be able to handle.
Not in 45 minutes, but I could.
Oh, this is
Let's
going to
get
be a fun one, Justin. I
let's
hope you're
get
ready
into
for
it.
this.
All right. So 2.25. Let's use
How
my
many
little.
millimeters is that?
That's 59.8 millimeters, I believe.
I love how you know that off the top of your head.
If I'm right, let's see. It's right around there.
Now we're all Googling it. 2.25 into millimeters.
Let's see. It is
57.15.
oh close. I knew it was right around there. I know there's 25.4 millimeters in an inch. That's all I know. Okay, now that we have it scaled, what's my famous line to always use if it's a hat design?
Bottom up, center out.
And global underlay.
Global extra stitches underlay.
Extra stitches, yeah. So I always tend to do a global underlay that's going to work its way center out. I do avoid, since I did center this design to make sure that my rulers are all accurate, but zero being your center point, I do avoid starting anywhere near that, because if we're working on a 6 panel hat, you don't want those lock stitches locking into the dreaded center seam of a Richardson 112. So I always kind of start off to the left here or to the right and kind of work my way, just doing some manual running stitches. And what this is doing is just securing that stabilizer to the back of the hat, making sure that that hat's not going to move around at all in the frame. And since I'm not looking at the live, Jeff, just let me know if there's any important questions. Anything about 3D Puff, just ignore.
I will let you know if there's questions. I may or may not have just pulled it up on YouTube, so I can type in the chat too.
Of course you did. So, all right. Global underlay. Work my way back here and then kind of set my running stitch lengths a little longer, since you don't need to pile up the really small stitches on there. I'm going to change the stitch color there so I can see the contrast. All right. So, this being on a hat for registration purposes, like Jeff was saying, I'm going to work my way from the bottom up. And typically when I have this much detail where there needs to be kind of perfect alignment, especially on a hat, we've got two outlines here, which designing this, I made myself a little bit more difficult on myself for registration purposes. But I'm going to actually kind of split this design in half and kind of do his face first, make sure that laying down the fills and the inner colors first, coming back with the outlines just to make sure that registration is nice and tight. Nothing is out of registration, and come back and do the hat afterwards. Sound like a plan, Jeff?
That sounds like a plan.
All right. So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to do some measurements on some line weights to see what kind of thicknesses we have. And most of these detail lines are under a millimeter or just at a millimeter, but the majority of them are under a millimeter. So more than likely the detail on his face, I'm going to come back with a running stitch detail. I tend to like doing my outlines first, because that's kind of going to give me the accurate almost trace of the design, and then come back and see where I need to place the inner colors or the bottom colors and overlapping and whatnot based on the outline that I digitize.
So Cindy asks, would you ever do half and then mirror the image?
On some stuff, because this is going to be a running stitch outline, it's hard to do, just because if I'm digitizing the pathing going one direction and then I come back and kind of mirror it and throw it over, it's not going to be um, a combined element that's going to be fluent in the way it runs. It would run one half and then come back into the other half. um, Things like the eyebrows, the mustache and stuff like that, because they are symmetrical, I could definitely just kind of flip over at least the inner colors, because they're going to be the same shape. Because there is the combine tool that you can use, but when you do running stitches and you do combine tools, depending on how it's digitized, it could run over itself too many times when the computer's trying to calculate the pathing and where to sew. So I tend to not like combining running stitches. So I hope that
That's kind
answers
of
your
like when
question.
passing a letter. If you put a run stitch in there, it's going to make sure that it sews that run stitch whether it needs to or not when you're combining them.
Exactly. So yes, I'm just gonna come down here, and I know the biggest thing in digitizing kind of all one piece of running stitch detail is, you really don't want to try to go only over itself, twice, especially on the smaller detail, just because, going over 3 or 4 times, you got to remember going one direction and coming back and trying to go forward. You're always going over itself twice. Um, so repeating itself over and over and over again, you're going to get several layers, and in the smaller details, it can get a little bit heavy.
All right, Justin. So Abigail asks, does the original artwork size matter?
No, just because you can scale the artwork in the. I'm not sure if you saw earlier that I actually grabbed the artwork and scaled it to the size that I wanted. Um,
See, and I was going to disagree with you. I was going to say, yes, it does.
well, I mean,
Yes and no.
yes and no. I mean, a lot of times when I'm digitizing, as long as I know my scale and I know, line weights and thicknesses and stuff like that, um, I kind of adjust on the fly as I'm digitizing. Uh,
Right.
so the actual artwork itself isn't all that important.
But if you're
Just
trying to digitize just straight off of the artwork by itself, then yes, it does matter.
exactly.
Because you have to add, on some of those lines, I think probably, what's a good one? Probably those little wrinkles under his eyes. That's either going to be a single run stitch or a double run stitch, or it's not going to be able to be a satin stitch. And so when you're looking at that and you're making those decisions, having it at scale is mildly important.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But in all the softwares, you can scale it to whatever size, finish size you're going to be. So Justin scaled this to the size that he was ready to have it at, and then he made the decision. He's going to make the decisions as he goes along.
Right. Exactly. So, um, so when I'm pathing stuff and I'm deciding to kind of a section I'm going to try to do manually, I'm punching through. Um, I I remember where my start point is and know that I started and came around here. And I usually what I try to do is use the outer outline as my travel path, where I know that's only going to be one layer. And that way, when I double back to where I am to make sure that that outer layer does have 2 layers of running stitches, um, only the inner parts am I actually coming in and doing, and doing 2 layers with, just because it's traveling out or traveling in and coming back out, that I know all those parts that aren't the outer edge of that design already have the 2 layers. So since I started here and ended here, I can go ahead and come back and just travel back just using that outer line, if that makes any sense.
A little bit. So
It's
you're
just
working your way from like as far as the reference image from the back to the front.
right now, I tend to do the outlines first. Whenever there is inside colors and an outline that needs to be, especially on hats, that needs to be really tight registration, only because um, it's going to be really based on how I digitize the outline. So if I use that as kind of a when I finish the outline first, I use it kind of as a tracing tool. So everything underneath, the colors underneath are going to be based on where I digitize that outline, especially if I'm making adjustments on the fly and it's not exactly following the artwork. I just find that if I have that outline there, it kind of gives me a guide on where I'm going to be overlapping those background colors.
Gotcha. Chris asks, where do you find your designs to digitize?
This one was created by AI. So that's where I found this one.
Okay.
AI is, there's that argument of using it, and I think it's for quick things like this, especially for practice. I think it's a good tool, especially if it's not something real specific that you need. Basically, just said I wanted a St. Patty's leprechaun mascot type design, and this is what I got. So
Okay. I know with me, and I know for sure with you, is a lot of where we get the artwork is it's customer submitted stuff that
exactly,
you know I've got two landscaping companies that I got to do their logos for, and a yoga studio. So when you do digitize and you do embroidery, most of your stuff comes from directly from customers.
exactly, yeah. So in areas like this in here, where I'm using running stitches as the outline, and there is kind of a thicker area, you could add a little bit of a satin stitch in here to kind of fill in this area, or you can kind of go over itself a couple times, just to thicken up those running stitches. I'm going to go back over to that section and kind of measure it and see if it's worth trying to put a satin stitch in there. So in case anybody doesn't recognize it, this is Wilcom Embroidery Studio. This is the newer 2025 version that I am digitizing in right now. So now just kind of building this outline here. Um, Looking at the eyes and stuff, I may incorporate at least the eyebrows into the second half that I'm doing with the hat, only because they kind of are overlapping the hat a little bit. So I think what I might do is go ahead and incorporate, like I said, that into the second half, um, because I am doing the face part in the first half. I will kind of come up here and do the eyes and incorporate those. So as far as um, the idea of copying and paste, since these are symmetrical stuff, um, I will kind of do the eye by itself as far as me digitizing of elements. Um, I won't just continue on using that same running stitch and continue into the eye, because if I'm incorporating other parts that I don't need to copy over, then I'm going to be deleting nodes and whatnot. So I'm going to stop here with this piece and then come back in here and kind of do the eye by itself. And that way I know I can just do it once and then copy it over. And these really fine lines in here in the corners and this little errant line out here, those are so small at this size that I'm not going to even worry about something like that. And probably even the little highlight of the eye, I'm not going to worry about, just because of how small that little area is. So for the pupil, I'm going to come in here and kind of add a satin stitch and then come back and finish off that part of the eye. And that way I can kind of work my way over to this other eye over here. And then a couple different ways. The duplicating, selecting the area I want to duplicate. If you click and hold your right mouse key and drag and drop, you can duplicate it. Then you can just mirror that object and kind of move in its place. Another way of doing that, oops, by selecting this section. I know Jeff uses this tool a lot, and I don't even know where it is because I don't hardly ever use it. Mirror by reference line. So if you click that,
That's yeah, you found it.
yeah.
In
So if
theory.
you mirror by reference line, and you actually just plot the point of the line that you're mirroring over, and I did that. I didn't duplicate it by reference line. Is there a duplicate by reference line?
Duplicate?
Yeah.
No,
I
you have
guess
to copy and paste it, and then
you have to copy and paste it, and then
yeah, you're thinking the wrong software.
gotcha. Well, I kind of got there. All right, so coming down here, doing the nose. And I'm hoping I could get most of this done, if not everything, by the end of the show. If not, I will definitely finish this up this week so you guys can download and use the file. So coming back to this mouth area, I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of a satin stitch here because it is kind of a big enough area to accommodate a satin stitch. If I can plot these points correctly. I'm having a hard time, Jeff.
Well, it is a Monday on a Tuesday. Cindy asks, I'm wondering about how many stitches this logo will be.
I would say 8, 9-ish. Probably closer to 9. All right, so coming back here, just finishing off the outline, knowing that I started up in here. So now we've come back here, came back over to the left, worked our way back over. So now we definitely have 2 outlines or 2 layers of running stitches on all our elements here. And I can't stand it when I forget a line when I'm digitizing.
And then when you copy it over and paste it over.
So a lot of times I'll just add, if you click on the line in your reshape tool, if you could add, right click adds a curved node, left click adds a straight node. I usually just kind of go in there and add some nodes to make an area that I forgot. Even though that area is so small, they probably wouldn't even have noticed on a hat. So, all right. So now that I have my basic outline here, I'm going to go ahead and kind of see how I'm going to layer this. Because of the overlap of colors that you really need to make sure that there's no garment, with a pull of thread, no garment showing through. And it goes away from top or on bottom to top a little bit in theory, but because that's another reason why I do that global underlay to kind of stabilize that and kind of doing the bottom up, center out to kind of stabilize things. I can choose to do this yellow section, even though it's not the furthest bottom, just because the green elements naturally are going to be on top of the yellow element. So I'm going to come back and do those first. So when there are some contrasting colors in the design, like, green being a little bit darker than the yellow, a lot of times if the global underlay is going to fit into the first color, that's not going to be too contrasting to the layers on top of it. I'll just incorporate it into the first color. But in this situation, let's just go ahead and make it its own color. And I would suggest to the user to make it the hat color. That way you're not detracting from the colors on top. So let's start with the furthest bottom element and get the mouth in there. And again, digitizing out of sequence, but knowing, because having software like this where I can easily resequence things, I'm not going to be too worried about how it's necessarily sequenced as I'm digitizing.
All right, Justin, we have a question from Barb actually. When you did the satin in the eye, was that running stitch? Then you right click the mouse and switch back and forth from satin to running.
Actually, spacebar will when you're using a running stitch, spacebar will toggle it back to the last tool that you use. So if it was a fill stitch I was using, and I finished that off and I hit spacebar, it'll toggle back to running stitch and then back to fill stitch. But it's that's how I toggled it back from satin. The first time using the satin, I went actually up to the satin or the column tool to select that. But once I was done digitizing that part of the eye, I was able to hit the spacebar. I think spacebar ends the object, and then hitting the spacebar again changes it to the running stitch tool.
Spacebar definitely ends the object, I know.
Yeah, so yeah, it's spacebar twice, ending the object and changing it to the running stitch tool. That's a cool little shortcut.
All right. So we have another question. Oh, wait, that popped up on my screen only, not yours. We have another question. It's from Chris. Speaking of hats, I have no problem embroidering flats, but when it comes to hats, I seem to break needles a lot. Any suggestions? Usually that's due to flagging. So your hat's not being either hooped properly or flat enough, and there's a lot of bouncing when your needle's running. Um, Maybe your cap driver's not. I typically start when somebody comes to me with that problem. I typically start with lowering the cap driver and adjusting that, and then moving from there.
Right. Yeah, a lot of times, like Jeff and I's class in Long Beach, a lot of our answers to questions was it depends.
Yep.
You are going to have those hats that are going to be a little bit more difficult to work with than others. But yeah, definitely the hooping and the on machine stuff as far as your hat driver are going to make a huge difference on flagging and how it's going to sew.
Yep. Massive. It's a massive difference when you get that adjusted properly.
Yeah, for sure. So again, just kind of utilizing the idea of center out. I'm just kind of building these layers. I'm probably going to have to come back and do part of that black hat before I do the face. So
Um, Chris asked if flex fits are good for embroidery or not. I personally like to embroider flex fits.
they're one of my favorites.
I think it's what 626277
Mm-hmm.
is the number that I really like. It sews really well. The buckram's not overly stiff. Just comes out really clean.
Yeah, 6277 is definitely one of my favorites. The Flex Fit line altogether, I think, is a really good brand. And I would say the majority of the Flex Fit technology hat that you see out there, even though they're sold under a different manufacturer's number, more than likely is made by Flex Fit.
Yeah, like the Upong flex fit stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. I think they're great to work with. So
Doug says I still need to adjust my hat driver. Great tip from your class.
it's definitely an important thing. I think as a novice, the two major things are hooping properly. Really getting that hooping technique down is one of the major ones, and your hat driver, making sure your machine's set up correctly.
Yep. And knowing your machine too, because I know one of the things that helped me get lower down to the brim of a hat was putting my design at the bottom center instead of center. But one of the nice things about the ZSK I have and the Happy that I have is that during the trace, I can adjust the design. So I can get the trace to the point where it's at the bottom center, and then I can adjust it to the brim, and then I can allow it to finish the trace. And that makes it really makes it easier to swap the hat because the center position is not as low.
Right.
Um, but I'm gonna there. We have two questions here, Justin, so I'm gonna hit them. Barb asks you, do you have a preference for for angle of the fill?
Um, I kind of work them. I typically keep them right around the 20 to 15 degree mark on hats. Um,
Or the
depending on
opposite, right?
what's that,
Or the opposite.
or the opposite. Yeah, definitely two different fills, especially really contrasting colors. You want to make sure that they're opposite from each other. You don't run them running in the same angle or similar angles, because where they overlap, you will get that kind of that zipper effect where you have the two colors running together. Um, on hats, what I try to usually do is depending on where the fill is laying in the design, I'm still trying to work that theory of working away from the center. You don't, if this fill was only this half of the face over here, I wouldn't do a fill where it's running to the center of the hat. You want to push out those stitches away from the center of the hat, so everything kind of going in those directions.
And then Chris asks, what do you mean by adjusting the cap driver? So I can get this one while you're
Yeah,
focusing on what you're doing, Justin. With the cap driver, there's going to be four bolts on it that adjust how high or low the actual drum sits when you put the driver on the machine. Um, and generally, when your machine comes, that drum is not adjusted down to the sewing arm. So basically, you adjust that down to the sewing arm, and you minimize the gap between the needle plate and the hat. And then that takes away a lot of your flagging. So I don't know of, I mean, honestly, I don't know of any machine that comes adjusted, because it's one of those things that could be bounced around during shipping.
right.
Um, but every machine I've looked at has had the adjustment where you could set that. And I like to use a business card to get my gapping correct. It is something that you want to make sure that you get your gap correct, because if you don't, the drum can actually rub against the sewing arm and kind of chew things up. So
Exactly.
may or may not have done that myself.
And there are times where you have those really stiff hats, and when you hoop them, um, there is that, because they don't want to lay flat when you're really yanking down when hooping. Um, just as stiff as they are, in the way that center six panel seam wants to sit and be real rigid, you're causing that gap between your needle plate and the hat. Um, and there's really no way around it. There's a lot of techniques out there that people use, like steaming hats, or um, kind of breaking down the center seam a little bit with, kind of massaging the hat or whatnot with different tools to try to get it, when you do hoop it, that material is going to lay a little bit flatter and closer
Yeah.
to the needle plate.
So Chris says, so just lower the adjustment all the way down. Not necessarily all the way. It really depends on the manufacturer and the machine. I would recommend reaching out to the manufacturer of your machine, because I know with my Happy that I had, they told me to adjust it all the way around, and it actually started chewing up the cap driver on the sewing arm, because it was actually rubbing and causing problems. And that's when they found out that the factory had added more adjustment in there than they had in the past. So it's one of those things that when you adjust it, you're going to want to run it left to right and kind of front to back, and make sure that you're not rubbing or hitting anywhere. Because that is definitely a possibility, especially when you try to get like I said, I put a business card on top of the sewing arm and I drop it to that, so I get about a business card's worth of gap in there. So it's not a lot of space.
Right. So I'm going to come back here. I'm just working my way around. I did a little bit of green in the ears. I'm going to come back and do the beard here. And I actually didn't do the white outline yet, but that's another one I would have usually done first, so I can kind of see where my overlap's going to be. Because when you have a double outline like this with the white and black, uh, you want at least one of them to be satin stitches. Trying to run two running stitches right next to each other and have them fall where they're supposed to fall is pretty impossible. Yeah, you'll definitely want one to be a satin stitch, which I'm going to be doing the white as a satin stitch since all the inner part of the face are going to be running stitches. Um,
So Barb says I will have to look at my hat driver tomorrow, and we'll ask my Avance tech about it. And Doug says as low as possible without rubbing on anything. Absolutely. That's my subscription of thought.
yeah, for sure. Um, Especially if you don't know the machines well and you haven't done it before, the last thing you want to do is start moving stuff around
Breaking stuff.
and breaking stuff. Exactly.
Yep.
So
I do
just
believe most manufacturers, at least that I've seen, has a video out there on how to do it properly on their machine.
right. So in Wilcom, I want to get a little bit of texture in the beards just so it's not just a straight flat fill. So in Wilcom, there is a couple ways you can do this. There is an effect, and I don't remember if hand stitch is if that's an add-on um, element or not. Um, but there's one that has a hand stitch effect. This one's a little bit harder to control because it is so random. Um, there's some times where you can see here it does leave some gaps. So if you are wanting to have something as far as full coverage, it's probably not a good idea to use the hand stitch effect. This is used a lot of stuff where it's like in fur and stuff like that, where you don't necessarily want full coverage or you're blending a bunch of colors together, so it will fill in. But another easier way is just going to the where is it under the fill tab under your object properties, and you have a random percentage that you can do. And if you could just add like 25, 35%, it randomizes where those needle penetrations are on your fill. So it will kind of give it kind of more of a jagged beard look to it. So and I also did use which I believe this is an add-on, the Florentine effect, where I can actually use kind of a curved stitch angle. Um,
That is a very good question because that might be in the. I know when they came out with 2025, they made a bunch of elements standard.
okay, yeah, there's some of these are standard and some of them are not. It's hard to tell because like when you're upgrading and you own ones before, and then when the new version comes out, sometimes they include different things. This is like my third version of Wacom since buying it, so I don't remember what was purchased and what comes
What
with.
was extra?
Yeah.
I'm just taking a look here. It does look like curved fills is still separate.
Is it still
I
separate?
believe it is an add-on.
Okay.
I believe. But I think they folded like 7 of them in. So Chris asks, he's looking to upgrade his machine. He hasn't had any issues. He currently has a Ricoma. Should I stay Ricoma or move to another? Honest opinion, I moved away from Ricoma. I started with a 15 needle, the MT series, and I moved away. And my honest opinion is that my Ricoma could do a lot of what my current machines can do now. Just my current machines can do it faster and quieter. Um, there's definitely I don't want to use the word. Trying to think of the politically correct way to say this. Um, that there is a difference in the machines where they're built, the amount of support out there for them. just the quality and the parts. There's definitely a difference, especially when you're looking at like ZSK or Tajima or Barrett. Those machines run fast and quiet. Um, Typically take a lot less maintenance.
Yeah, there's just like anything else, a car is
Justin
gonna be
doesn't know. He's always had Tajimas.
a car. That's not true. Back in my day,
In the 1800s,
I used a chisel and
right? You chiseled it into the stone.
exactly. No,
I
we
remember now.
we used to run Melcos actually back when I
Yeah.
first started. So,
Interestingly enough, there's actually somebody selling a Digitrack board local to me.
oh really?
Yep. It's the full board with the mouse and everything. And I look at it and I go, maybe, but then I look at the price and I think, no. And then it's way too big.
Yeah.
But it would be a piece of digitizing history I could put in my room and say, this is as old as Justin.
All right. Well, we're on that note.
Welcome back to the Popcorn Gallery.
I didn't finish his eyes, but we are kind of running out of time here. So this is as far as I've got. Let's do a quick redraw. It's going to lay down the global underlay again. Get your starting point away from that center seam so you don't get any broken needles when you're first starting. I did come back and add that kind of that upper bottom lip of the hat because that does kind of sit behind some of the elements that I'm sewing now. I come back and do the yellow portions, which are the face in here. Come back and do the ear part. I'm doing the beard with some texture and some kind of that curved feel appeal to it. Got some kind of mustachy texture in the mustache as well. And I will add,
Mustache texture.
yes, mustachy texture. I will come back and add the eyes for that section and also that white border, which will go the white satin border, which will go before that running stitch border, because you would definitely want to do the satin borders before you do the running stitch, just because the registration purposes. But I will finish the design up. Maybe we'll do a quick reel or a quick video on our socials to kind of show the finished product and how it sews. Um, and then we'll get that up on the website before the
See, I had to sit back so that everybody didn't see me leaned way in trying to look at the screen with my old eyes. I swear I need like binoculars to get everything in sometimes.
you just need some of these.
I like it drives my wife nuts because when I say I need to zoom in, I just go closer to the monitor. I don't like scroll in, I just get closer. I'm still at a 6-to-1 ratio, so right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but like you said, you're gonna finish that up. Probably it'll make a nice reel, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll do a reel on that. I'll throw popcorn at him until he does. But as far as announcements go, we'll go ahead and tail off with announcements. Again, we have the book from Bonnie that we have up on our website. I have my copy right here. It's called Punch. That is available at theembroiderynerd.com. We're really lucky that we were able to bring it in and offer it to you guys at a affordable price. So we have that book that we brought in, and I don't think that we have any. I don't think we really have any other announcements. There's no like teaching gigs coming up. It's just going to be mellow summer.
Mellow summer.
Something will pop up.
I'm sure we'll have an idea here and there, or two or three or whatever.
Or 4.
But yeah, go check out the book. I put the link without the ghost faced emoji. I don't know where that was coming from. Theembroiderynerd.com. Click on
So I
the
typed it in on the actual YouTube, and it only showed the ghost face on our software. So the
weird.
link actually went in properly. I don't know why it's reading it as a ghost face, but I think it's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
At least for us. But if you guys go to theembroiderynerd.com, you can check it out there. Or if you go to links.embnerd.com, You can find pretty much all of our socials are on there. You can join our Discord group if you guys are Discord people. I very much like Discord. It's really nice for communication, but you can join our conversation over on Discord if you'd like, as well as join our Facebook group that is on Facebook. My brain went completely blank.
Our Facebook group that is on
On
Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah,
Where else would
exactly.
it be?
If you guys want a really easy way that you can support us, go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube. That directly helps us out, and it also helps notify you when we have new content coming out. I don't know if you want to sprinkle anything extra here on the top, Justin.
I think that's it. I will give me a day or so in between my paying job. I will get this design done and make sure that you guys can utilize it and do some stuff. And when you do, share it in the group, share it wherever, tag us, and we love to see your projects with the designs we put out. So
Absolutely. With that, I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery. We have Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios. We're both here representing the Embroidery Nerd. We'd like to thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
good night, everybody.